The scream tore through the night like glass shattering against stone, sharp and wet, as if dragged from a throat full of blood. Thomas Hayes stood frozen on the gravel path, his flashlight beam trembling in his grip. The farmhouse loomed, its broken windows black as eyes gouged from a corpse. The wind hissed, carrying a faint metallic tang that burned in his nostrils. He whispered, "No one should be alive in there," though his words held no conviction. The boards inside moaned, bending beneath the weight of something unseen, something heavy dragging across warped planks. Mist curled at his boots as shadows deepened, swallowing every sound. Even the crickets had fallen silent. He took a step, gravel crunching underfoot, breath caught in his throat. Then from within the hollow dark, a whisper slithered free, deliberate, hoarse, shaping his name like a curse. The farmhouse breathed with him, each creak of the boards echoing his heartbeat. The air was rotten with mildew, but beneath it lay the sharper sting of blood. His flashlight beam swept the hall, catching fragments of wallpaper peeling like dead skin. "This place should have collapsed years ago," he muttered, though no one answered. The dispatcher's voice replayed in his mind, cold and factual, reporting screams from this very address. His pulse hammered, louder than silence, drowning the faint drag echoing deeper within the walls. Each shadow stretched unnaturally far, folding in on themselves with every flick of the beam. He swallowed hard, throat tight, whispering, "If anyone's here, call out." Only his own voice returned, warped and hollow, bouncing back as if the walls themselves mocked him. The beam froze on a figure. A girl stood at the far end, pale and still, her torn dress hanging limp. Her hair clung in damp strands, eyes fixed on him, empty and unblinking. "It's okay, I'm here to help," Thomas whispered, voice breaking. She did not move, not a breath, not a blink. He stepped forward, boards bending beneath his boots, but she never drew nearer. The air grew thick, pressing down on his chest, each inhale a struggle. The flashlight caught her eyes again. They shimmered gray, hollow, like ash. His breath hitched, lungs seizing. A whisper spilled from her lips, too faint to grasp, but sharp enough to twist silence into something wrong. His stomach lurched. Duty pulled him forward, but instinct screamed to run. Then she smiled, faint, wrong, and inhuman. The whisper sharpened, her voice curling around his name like smoke. Thomas's skin crawled under his gear. "How do you know me?" he shouted, his voice shaking. The girl tilted her head slowly, smile splitting wider until it warped her face. The floor groaned under her weight, though she stood still. His flashlight flickered, sputtering against shadows that seemed to pulse alive. The walls trembled faintly with a chorus of whispers, writhing along the plaster like insects. His breath grew shallow, chest heavy. Suddenly, her head snapped sideways with a crack, hanging at an impossible angle. A shadow seeped from her feet, oozing like smoke across the warped boards. Thomas staggered backward, heart pounding. He muttered, "This isn't real." Yet nothing felt more real than the darkness pressing in. The beam flickered out, plunging him into choking dark. Skittering noises erupted, circling him, then fell silent. Light snapped back, landing on a crooked frame hanging from the wall. The glass cracked, edges scorched. He raised the beam, trembling. Inside the frame was a photograph of a family. A father, mother, daughter, standing before the very farmhouse he now stood in. Their faces were wrong, smiles blurred, as though fading from existence. His stomach sank as he recognized the child. The same girl from the hall. A date scrawled at the bottom twisted his gut. 2 decades passed. "No," he whispered. Behind him, the dragging sound returned, heavier, closer, joined by a wet, rasping breath. Thomas clutched the frame tight, desperate for proof, though he knew it offered none. Thomas's stomach churned as the girl's shadow seeped away into the cracks of the floor. He staggered backward, but the dragging sound persisted, circling him like a predator. The beam of his flashlight shook in his hand, flickering against the peeling walls. His breath rasped as he whispered, "You're not real," yet the words carried no strength. Then his eyes caught something nailed to the hallway wall. A stack of old newspapers, edges burned, headlines half missing. He pulled one free with trembling fingers. The bold type screamed a story from decades ago. Fire consumes farmhouse, all occupants dead. His skin went cold. He looked up slowly, and the girl was gone. The silence grew heavier, pressing like stone. Then, faint but deliberate, the dragging noise started again upstairs, floorboards bending under invisible weight. The headline blurred in his trembling grip, the letters twisting as though they resisted being read. He muttered the words aloud. "Family of 3, dead." The word dead echoed unnaturally, vibrating in the silence. He dropped the paper, and it drifted down like falling ash. The memory slammed into him, his first fire call years ago, a farmhouse eerily like this one. He remembered screams, the unbearable heat, the crack of beams collapsing. He shook his head violently. This wasn't memory. This was now. Or both at once. His breathing grew ragged, his chest tightening under the weight of confusion. He backed away until the wall pressed cold against his shoulders. From above, a floorboard shrieked. He lifted the beam, catching dust falling from the ceiling, each speck glowing like dying embers. Thomas closed his eyes, but the memory clawed deeper. The fire, the heat, the choking smoke, his voice hoarse from shouting names into the blaze. He remembered carrying someone out, but their face was gone, blurred. Survivor's guilt gnawed at him, a weight he had buried for years. His knees threatened to buckle, but a sound jolted him back. The dragging noise again, closer, heavier, as though something crawled just beyond the reach of his light. He spun the beam across the walls, catching the faint outlines of hands imprinted in soot, dozens of them, stretched as if clawing to escape. His breath caught. "No," he whispered. The hands were not still. Faintly they shifted, pressing outward, leaving streaks in the dust as though reaching for him. His pulse hammered as he stumbled back, but the whispers began again, crawling along the walls like static. His light flickered, casting jagged shadows. Then, from the far end of the hall, a figure stepped forward, not the girl this time, but a man. His features were blurred, face blackened by burns, clothes charred rags. The figure raised one hand, pointing directly at Thomas. His body stiffened, the air leaving his lungs. The silence broke with a voice, low and broken, yet unmistakably human. "You'll let us burn." Thomas's chest clenched as though crushed. His mind screamed it was impossible, but the voice was real, vibrating through his bones. He stepped backward, feet unsteady. The figure did not move closer, but its shadow stretched unnaturally, slithering across the warped boards. Thomas's throat tightened. Words stuck like thorns. He wanted to deny it, to scream it wasn't true, but his body refused. The figure at the end of the hall whispered again, "You let us burn," each word laced with fire and ash. His hands trembled as the flashlight flickered, beams sputtering against the dark. He stumbled, shoulders slamming the wall, heartbeat roaring in his ears. He gasped. "I tried," but the voice drowned him out, rising in chorus. From the walls, from the ceiling, from the floor itself, the voices multiplied, overlapping until the air vibrated. Thomas dropped to his knees, palms pressed to his head, choking on guilt and terror. The hallway pulsed alive with shadows, stretching toward him like reaching arms. The silence shattered as a child's sob echoed faintly, pulling Thomas deeper into the maze of the farmhouse. His boots thudded against warped boards, every step trembling with unease. The light swung wildly, illuminating fractured beams and blackened wallpaper. Then he saw her. The same girl stood again, smaller now, clutching a stuffed bear charred at the edges. "Please," she whispered, but her lips never moved. The sound crawled from the walls, not her throat. Thomas felt his chest tighten, instincts warning him it was wrong, all wrong. He stepped closer, hand shaking, whispering, "I'll get you out." The girl's hollow eyes lifted to his, shimmering with ash-gray light. Her bear dropped to the floor with a dull thud. The noise reverberated too loud, echoing like a death knell in the choking silence. From behind him came the sound of boots crunching against glass. Thomas spun, flashlight beam cutting across the hall, only to reveal another figure. It was Robert Mills, his fellow firefighter, the skeptic who had laughed at ghost stories on night shifts. "You're chasing shadows, Tom," Robert said, voice sharp, dismissive. His uniform was soot-stained, but his eyes carried a strange hollowness. Thomas stammered, "How the hell did you get here?" Robert smirked faintly, shaking his head. "You're letting fear eat you alive." The hall groaned, walls flexing as if they breathed. The girl was gone, replaced by empty space. Thomas's pulse thundered, his grip slick with sweat. His voice cracked as he whispered, "You don't understand." Robert's smirk widened, but his eyes flickered with something darker, something not human. The beam swung back across the hallway, catching the walls again, and Thomas's breath froze. Charred silhouettes stood etched in black, their forms burned into plaster, each with twisted mouths open in silent screams. Then, slowly, the shadows detached from the wall, peeling free like skin tearing from bone. They swayed in the light, faces, eyeless but unmistakably human. Thomas stumbled, muttering, "No, this isn't possible." The shapes whispered his name in unison, voices dry, scraping. They crept closer, gliding across the warped floor without sound. Thomas raised his axe, his hands trembling. Robert stood still, smirk gone, face blank. The shadows halted inches from Thomas, their heads cocked like broken dolls, and the hall sank into an even darker silence. Thomas's voice cracked as he shouted, "Stay back!" The flashlight flickered, its beam sputtering weakly across their forms. One shadow leaned closer, its faceless head tilting unnaturally. A whisper rasped, "You left us." Thomas's knees buckled, guilt crushing him like stone. Robert's voice cut the air, calm but wrong. "They only want truth." Thomas whipped his head toward him, but Robert's expression was unreadable. The firefighter he knew was gone, replaced by something hollow. Thomas felt the weight of betrayal tighten his chest. His voice broke, "You're not real." Robert stepped closer, smirk curling again, whispering, "Neither are you." The shadows surged at those words, pressing closer, the air thick with their heatless presence. Thomas's scream tore loose, his axe swinging wildly. Thomas swung, the axe slicing through nothing, meeting only air and dust. The shadows shrieked, the sound splitting his skull, yet they did not vanish. Instead, they recoiled, retreating into the walls, leaving the plaster cracked and seared. Thomas panted, chest heaving, sweat dripping beneath his helmet. His flashlight beam caught the floor, revealing a paper lying in the dust. He bent down, hands shaking as he lifted it. It was a ledger, brittle with age, names scribbled in fading ink. His breath caught as he traced the list. Every victim of the farmhouse fire was written there, one after another. At the bottom, smeared in soot, was his own name. His stomach twisted as the air turned icy. Behind him, Robert whispered, "Told you so," his voice stretching like a hiss. The farmhouse seemed to shift as Thomas stumbled back toward the front room. The ceiling above groaned like a living beast, rafters straining under invisible weight. His flashlight cut across the firehouse crest nailed crooked on the wall, a relic left behind. It shouldn't have been there, yet it was. Charred, blackened, stained with soot. His throat tightened as he reached toward it, hand shaking. The emblem from his own station. He gasped, "Nah, this can't be mine." The air stank of smoke, though no fire burned. The walls pulsed faintly, like lungs expanding with each beat of his heart. His mind screamed it was impossible, but the proof clung to the wall. He staggered back, dread clawing at his chest. The house wasn't haunted by strangers. It was haunted by him. The silence shattered as a crash thundered from the far corridor, the sound of lockers slamming shut. Thomas's light flicked wildly, and for a moment the farmhouse dissolved. Instead, He stood inside his fire station, the walls pristine, rows of lockers gleaming. He blinked hard, gasping, "No, no, this isn't right." A locker door creaked open slowly, hinges screaming. Smoke drifted from inside, curling like fingers. He staggered closer, boots echoing too loud on tile that should not exist. The nameplate read haze, letters scorched black. His breath froze. He reached to touch it, but the handle was searing hot, burning through his glove. He stumbled back, helmet clattering against the locker behind him. The illusion flickered, station walls peeling away, farmhouse rot bleeding through once more. His chest heaved, panic thick in his throat, as a figure emerged at the edge of his light. It was Samuel Griggs, once a fellow firefighter, now gaunt and trembling, his eyes ringed with black. Samuel had died years ago, in a blaze Thomas could not forget. "You didn't pull me out," Samuel rasped, his voice cracked, dry as ash. Thomas shook his head, words broken. "I tried. I swear I tried." Samuel stepped closer, his charred boots crunching the warped boards, shadows clinging to him like chains. "No, you left me." His hand reached out, skin flaking, falling like ash with every movement. Thomas backed away, guilt gnawing deep, but Samuel's eyes burned bright with accusation. "Now you burn too." Thomas's breath came in ragged bursts, his axe slipping in his sweaty grip. Samuel's figure wavered, part shadow, part flesh, his charred mouth stretching into something less than human. Then Samuel's form collapsed suddenly into smoke, scattering like embers. From the corner of the room came a laugh, hollow, cruel, echoing through the rotting beams. Thomas whipped the beam of light toward the sound, only to find Robert again, standing half in shadow, eyes black as coal. His smirk cut sharp. "You still don't get it," Robert said softly. "I was never here to save you." The words cut deeper than the girl's whispers, deeper than Samuel's accusations. The hall quaked, dust spilling from the ceiling. The betrayal pressed against Thomas's chest like a blade. The house groaned, every wall flexing, as if it breathed with the voices inside it. The air grew suffocating, heat pressing against Thomas's skin, though no fire burned. Faces appeared in the flames of his flickering beam, twisted and mournful, mouths opening in silent screams. They melted into the walls, only to reform, their eyes locked on him. His knees threatened to buckle under the weight of their gaze. He whispered, "What do you want from me?" The voices answered in a chorus, rising from floorboards and ceilings, layered with rage and sorrow. "The truth." His grip faltered, the axe nearly slipping from his hand. The house rattled violently, dust raining from above, shadows twisting into faces of the dead. Their mouths opened wide, as if to consume him whole. The house trembled, dust raining like ash, as Thomas's light flickered across the rotting beams. His knees buckled under the weight of memory and terror. The flames he'd thought extinguished returned in flashes, swallowing walls and ceiling, burning the farmhouse anew. He staggered, whispering, "This fire already happened." The smoke thickened, curling through his lungs, though no blaze touched him. His vision blurred with tears and sweat, and suddenly he saw them, the family from the photograph, standing in the hall. Their eyes hollow, their faces pale, their skin flaking like charred paper. They spoke in one voice, brittle and cold. "We died here long ago." Thomas's chest seized, his axe clattering to the floor. He gasped, unable to deny it any longer. The people he thought he'd saved had already been dead for years. Thomas's breath rattled as he backed into the wall, his palms pressed hard against decaying plaster. "No, no, I pulled you out," he cried, shaking his head. The family stared, eyes unblinking, lips curling into brittle smiles. The girl stepped forward, voice like splintering wood. "You carried us, yes, but not to life." Thomas shook violently, memories flooding in, flames, screams, the unbearable weight in his arms, and the silence that followed. His mind tore between past and present, unable to reconcile. The walls seemed to close in, fire licking at edges, though no flame burned. His voice cracked in desperation. "I tried to save you." Their reply came as one, quiet and merciless. "We were already gone." His heart hammered so hard it seemed ready to break. The silence cracked as another figure emerged from the haze. It was the stranger he'd glimpsed before, tall and gaunt, dressed in a weathered coat that seemed to shift like smoke. His face was obscured, but his voice carried power, heavy with finality. "This house does not burn, it consumes." Thomas's eyes widened as the figure stepped closer, every motion deliberate, every word a curse. "It feeds on memory, on guilt. And you, Thomas Hayes, are its firewood." His hands trembled as he whispered, "Who are you?" The stranger tilted his head, shadows clinging to his face. "I am nothing. I am what remains." The air grew colder, the walls creaking like bones. Thomas's breath fogged as dread settled into his bones like frost. The stranger's words hung heavy as Thomas staggered to his feet, voice hoarse. "Then what is it you want from me?" The gear's shadow stretched unnaturally, covering the walls and ceiling. "Truth," he replied, his tone sharp as glass. The fire roared suddenly, bursting from cracks in the boards though nothing burned. Thomas shielded his face, heat searing, sweat pouring down his brow. He stumbled, gripping his axe again, though it felt weightless in his hands. The family's faces twisted in the flames, their mouths moving in silent screams. Thomas shouted, "I did everything I could." His words cracked, broken by grief. The stranger's silhouette loomed taller, filling the hall. His voice slithered through the heat. "And still, you let them die." The ledger appeared again at Thomas's feet, pages fluttering as though turned by unseen hands. He bent slowly, dread hollowing his chest, and saw the names once more. His fingers shook as he traced the ink, smeared with soot until he reached the last line. His own name burned into the page, black and final. His breath hitched, the realization crushing him. He had never left the fire. His soul had been trapped in the blaze all along, feeding it, reliving it endlessly. The stranger's voice rumbled low. "This is your truth." Thomas screamed, tearing the page, but the ink bled into his hands, staining his skin. His flashlight flickered and died, plunging him into suffocating dark as the voices swelled in unison. The walls convulsed as if alive, splintering outward to reveal a labyrinth of burning corridors. Thomas stumbled forward, boots striking charred planks that twisted beneath him. The farmhouse stretched endlessly, its hallways looping into impossible paths. His breath came fast, smoke biting his throat, though no fire consumed him. He swung his light, but it barely pierced the oppressive dark. Shadows leaned toward him, faces screaming silently from warped beams. His voice cracked as he whispered, "There's no way out." The house answered with a low groan, shaking dust and ash from the ceiling. His knees weakened, the weight of hopelessness pressing down. He turned sharply, only to find the path behind him sealed by flame. The house had trapped him, twisting into a prison of smoke and bone. The fire flickered unnaturally, freezing in place as if time itself had broken. Then, from the shifting walls, Robert emerged again. His uniform was scorched, his eyes black pits swallowing all light. He walked calmly through the smoke, unbothered by the chaos. "I told you," Robert said, voice cold and steady. "You never saved anyone. You only fed the flames." Thomas raised his axe trembling, but Robert didn't flinch. "Why fight me?" Robert asked. "I am what you've become." Thomas shook his head, fury and despair clashing. "You're not me," he hissed, though his grip faltered. Robert's smirk widened, his body flickering like a projection, half shadow, half flesh. "Then why do you remember my sins as your own?" The words sank deep, heavier than fire. Thomas charged forward, swinging his axe, but the blade cut through Robert's body like smoke. The figure rippled, then solidified again, smirking. "You can't kill guilt," Robert mocked, his voice echoing from all directions. Thomas gasped, spinning as shadows swarmed the corridor, their hands stretching out, grasping for him. He swung wildly, the axe meeting only air, his chest burning with exertion. One shadow clawed across his shoulder, leaving a searing cold that made him stumble. He roared, shaking it off, sweat pouring beneath his gear. The house shook violently, walls cracking, beams collapsing in bursts of fire. Still, Robert stood untouched, his eyes glinting. "Every flame you fought only brought you back here," he hissed. "This is where you belong." Thomas staggered, his body trembling, as the girl appeared once more in the flames. She clutched the scorched teddy bear, her hollow eyes locked on him. "Please," she whispered, though her lips did not move. He froze, torn between horror and pity. She stepped closer, the bear slipping from her hand, smoldering into ash. "End it," she begged, her voice cracking into dozens of overlapping tones. Thomas's throat tightened. He dropped his axe, his hands trembling as he reached toward her. But her face warped, melting into the hollow sockets of every victim he had lost. Their voices rose, surrounding him, pressing into his skull. He screamed, clutching his head, stumbling backward. The fire roared higher, consuming the hallway, sealing him in with their demands. Thomas collapsed to his knees, the flames circling him like predators. His flashlight sputtered and died, plunging him into red glow and shadow. Robert's voice echoed from the fire, cruel and final. "You will never leave. You are fuel, nothing more." Thomas clutched the ledger still stained with his name, screaming, "No, I won't be part of this." He slammed the book against the floor, pages scattering like embers. The house shook violently, beams splintering, walls shrieking as though in pain. For a moment, the shadows recoiled, their screams sharp and unearthly. Thomas rose shakily, defiant, though his face dripped with sweat and tears. He gripped his axe one last time, staring into the inferno. His voice was hoarse but steady. "Then I'll burn with you." The flames suddenly died, leaving silence so heavy it crushed Thomas's chest. The farmhouse stood in ruin around him, beams cracked, air thick with ash. He staggered through the corridor, boots sinking into dust as if into sand. His flashlight was dead, yet he could see faintly, the glow of something unnatural seeping from the walls. He whispered, "It's over," though he didn't believe it. Then he saw them, rows of charred faces etched into the plaster watching him. Their mouths were still, but their eyes burned with hollow fire. His hands shook as he lowered the axe, his strength draining. The silence was worse than the screams had been. He realized he wasn't leaving. Not this house. Not this night. He belonged here now. The hall stretched forward, endless though the house itself was in ruins. Thomas dragged his boots, every step echoing like a funeral drum. Ahead, faint moonlight spilled through a shattered window, pale and cold. He stumbled toward it, desperate, but the closer he came, the further it seemed. The window retreated with every step, the light dimming until it was only a memory. He cried out, "Please let me out!" His voice cracked, carrying no strength. Behind him, whispers rose, calling his name again and again, overlapping until the air vibrated. He turned sharply, face wet with tears, but saw nothing except shifting shadows. The farmhouse groaned, trapping him in its endless night, feeding on his desperation. In the silence that followed, a voice broke through, soft and mournful. Samuel Griggs appeared again, his charred figure standing in the middle of the hall. "I warned you," Samuel whispered, his tone weary rather than cruel. Thomas's chest ached, his voice trembling. "Why me?" Samuel tilted his head, ash falling from his burned shoulders. "Because you lived when we did not." The words cut deep, sharper than accusation. The house creaked, beams groaning, shadows folding around them both. Samuel's body flickered, fading in and out of sight. "We burned, and so will you," he said softly. Then his form crumbled like paper to ash, scattering into nothing. Thomas dropped to his knees, a broken sob tearing from his throat. The floorboard split, glowing with fire beneath, and smoke rolled upward like a living tide. The girl appeared again, pale and silent, holding the teddy bear whole once more. She looked at Thomas with empty eyes, her lips parting slightly. "It's time," she said, her voice echoing from every direction. Thomas shook his head, his eyes wild. "No, I won't stay." She stepped closer, the firelight reflecting in her hollow gaze. "You already have," she replied, soft but final. The floor collapsed further, flames licking at his boots, smoke choking him. He clutched the axe, desperate, torn between fight and surrender. The girl's smile twisted, almost kind, almost cruel. "This house is yours now." The farmhouse roared alive, every wall blazing with fire that did not burn, every shadow screaming with voices of the dead. Thomas raised his axe one last time, screaming defiance, but the flames surged forward, engulfing him. His cry echoed through the halls, carried by smoke, until it dissolved into silence. When the firelight dimmed, there was no trace of him, only the ruined house. Outside, the wind carried the faintest sound, a ragged scream that faded into the night, as though the farmhouse had breathed him in. The darkness settled, heavy and eternal. The door creaked slowly shut, and from within, a whisper rose. It was his voice now, calling a name that was not his own.